lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Jeremy Lee in the building and every guest that you ever needed. Sports cards after hours keep the hobby heated. Updates, hobby talk like you never seen it. Sports cards live and none could ever beat it. Sports cards is a lifestyle. Sports cards and we live now. Welcome to another episode of Sports Cards Live with your host, Jeremy Lee.
All right, welcome everybody to episode 195 of Sports Cards Live. It is Saturday night, August the 12th, 2023. My name is Jeremy Lee. I would like to thank everyone who tuned in last time with our guest, Kevin Randall at the Captain 37. We had a great episode. You can check that out on the YouTube channel. Next week on the show, we have Paul Lesko, hobby attorney, joining us again for the first time in over 2 years to break down ongoing litigation in the hobby, including Panini versus Fanatics. I'd like to ask you to join over 400,000 people who have already downloaded the Center Stage app across both iOS and Android for quick comps and card management features. Their app is the fastest and most accurate of card shows to help you price your cards, whether you are selling, buying, whatever it is you want to do. Build, organize, share your collection with your friends, and find other collectors to follow using their social sharing features. They've announced some exciting new grading partnerships, so check out their Instagram account and join me in supporting the great team they have there and the innovation they are undertaking. Also, use protection and practice safe swaps. VeriSwap is an app and middleman service that lets you securely trade cards through the mail. Every transaction up to $1 million is fully insured by their guarantee. To use VeriSwap, upload your inventory, make trade, partial trade, or full cash offers, and negotiate with thousands of traders already on the platform. Check them out on iOS and Android. And as part of the special offer, your first trade on VeriSwap is $1. There's a referral link in the video description for your convenience. I want to thank both of those sponsors of the show. Also, Leighton, Sheldon, and Just Collect. He will be joining us tonight for the Vintage Spotlight segment, as always. Also, please check out hobbynewsdaily.com for your daily dose of hobby news and entertaining content. It is a collaboration of various content creators and original writers, and those guys are doing a great job over there. Check that out, hobbynewsdaily.com. Finally, Tag Grading, the Discord service and the Facebook group are both live and very active. So join hobbyists who are chatting, buying, selling, and trading tag slabs, sharing pictures, talking shop, and connecting with hobbyists who like transparent and reproducible grading. Go to taggrading.com and the community tab to enter or join either of those communities. You'll find out first about tag grading drops and even surprise flash drops. Tag will be grading live on site at the Burbank show at the end of this month. So get ready to have your minds blown in terms of what the future of grading looks like. As always, I'd like to thank all partners of Sports Cards Live for your ongoing support. And of course, all of our loyal viewers and listeners. If you're not yet subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast, please take a moment and do so. And as always, tonight, your comments and questions are in play. Tonight's guests comprise the new management and promotions team for the National Sports Collectors Convention. We all just finished being there a couple of weeks ago in Chicago. Let's bring them out one at a time. We've got Joe Drelich, we've got Jimmy Ryan, and we've got Brian Coppola. Fellas, welcome to Sports Cards Live. How are you doing tonight, Joe? How are you?
Doing great, Jeremy. Thank you so much for having us on. It's been a long time coming, and we're happy to be here.
I appreciate that. It's been a while, and we'll get to that too. But welcome to the show, Joe. Brian, how you doing tonight?
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for having us. I'm very excited to do this interview.
I'm super happy to have you, Brian. And Jimmy Ryan, how are you tonight?
Doing great. Thank you again for having us on here. We're looking forward to it.
Well, guys, I got to tell you, it's a long time coming. I'm super honored that you did choose Sports Cards Live, my platform here, as the one you wanted to use to initially share your plans and vision with a hobby for the National as you guys take it over. I think it's worthwhile if we get to know each of you. I mean, I feel like I know you guys. I want the audience, the hobby who's watching, to get to know each of you a little bit better. So let's start with you, Joe. A bit about your hobby history, trade show, management, promotion experience, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. Hobby history is a very long one. Started in 1980, where I actually started helping a show promoter, neighbor of mine, who promoted shows up in North jersey when I was actually 9 years old. So at 9 years old, I started helping run his tables. Fast forward through a long collecting history. I was always involved in the industry, buying and selling. I ended up opening up a card store, convincing my history teacher in the 80s to open up a card store, which I ran while I wasn't playing sports. Moved that into an online, actually a mail order business and Sports Collectors Digest, and then to an online presence, and then fast forward to the promotion part of it, which would have been 2016, where I got involved in the Chantilly show, which is known as CSA shows in Chantilly, Virginia, as an owner and in charge of promotion and management of that show. And 1 year later, got involved with the Philly show, took over ownership and management of that as well, and been doing that for the last 7 years now, and really excited about it, enjoy it, still collect today very passionately, and very much look forward to the challenges and the excitement and all that we can offer to the national and our hobby, which has been amazing to me for my whole life. So very, very much looking forward to it.
So you definitely have the experience, Joe. Tell us something about your collection. What's the last card you bought? What's something you're working on, a lifelong project you've been on? Give us something about your collection itself.
Oh, that's easy. T206 Red Ames. So that would be a passion project that started about 10 years ago. I started building a really low-grade T206 set, ones and twos, and completed that set. And when you say complete, if you're a T206 collector, you know that it doesn't include Hannes Wagner. It doesn't include Eddie Plank. So, beyond that, Sherry Maggie is in there, which if you're a T206 nut, that you know what that is, and Ray Demmett and Bill O'Hare. So anyway, I'm getting off track here, but Red Ames is on the first page of my T206 set. I like to have a lot of them ungraded, as many as I can. The Hall of Famers I like to have graded in typically threes. So Red Ames, my Red Ames was trashed. It's a portrait of Red Ames with his hands over his head, and it looked like it got hit by a bus about 15 times. And so every time I opened up that binder and looked at it, I saw the Red Ames terrible looking card. So I actually just bought that last week on eBay. So it was actually very exciting for me. So
congratulations, Brian. Let's go over to you. A little bit about your hobby, event, promotion, management experience, and something about your collection too, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so hobby event promotions. Jimmy and I started together in 2004, 2005, and we took over the Gloria Rothstein show, which is based out of White Plains, New York. We both had a passion, we looked at the show, we saw its need for new show management. We had ambitions and dreams, and we got together and we partnered just harmoniously, and we got in there and just stirred the pot, and 19 years later we're still partners, and obviously there's us and Joe now going to the national, but we just love promoting shows, and if the story about Gloria Rothstein and and JP Sports, there we are, we're running shows, we're having a great time. As far as about my personal collection, I'm a big Reggie Jackson fan, and of all football players on earth that I'm a big fan of is Brad Johnson. There's a lot of people like, who is Brad Johnson? And he won a Super Bowl for the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. And so, I'm a big ComC collector. So I'm out on ComC constantly buying inserts and parallels and all this other crazy stuff. And, I love 50s. I love wax. I love everything 80s, 90s, 2000s, autographs in between. I deal with it every day, and I don't need to have it in-house right now. I'm chasing the things that just tickle my fancy, and those are the two things, Reggie Jackson and Brad Johnson, and that's today's collection. Tomorrow will be another thing, and the year after will be another thing, but today that's what we're chasing, so.
Love it. I love Reggie Jackson's 1969 Topps rookie is one of my favorite cards. I have a painting of that card on the other side of the wall that's behind my monitor here. So love the card. Love the card. Jim Ryan, how about yourself? Anything different about your hobby, event promotions and management experience from what Brian said, and something about your collecting?
All right. So I got started kind of a funny way. I was working for a manufacturing company, and a friend of mine says to me, I'm going to a card show. I thought he said a car show. He goes, no, I'm going to a baseball card show. So I went to my first baseball card show, typical Holiday Inn 50, 60 table show. Walked in and said, oh, I'm hooked. I'm hooked back again. Collected cards when I was a kid. Started setting up at all the shows. Became a vintage card dealer. Similar like Joe, became a vintage card dealer. And my collection consists of older vintage, pre-war, because I sell basically the Topps and Bowman stuff. So I never sell the pre-war stuff. So I wanted to collect the pre-war. I have multiple T206 sets, Gowdy set, Cracker Jacks. I really enjoy the older cards. Promotion-wise, I was doing all the shows. 2003, the local show promoter said he was going to move to Delaware. And I said, Dennis, how are you going to move to Delaware? How are we going to run it? Keep the shows going? He says, you can run them. Show up an hour earlier, stay an hour later, I'll show you how to do it. I said, okay, let's give it a try. Then so we did that. 2004, we ran the Big Hofstra show, which is still running today, which we run twice a year. And then in 2005, along with Brian, we purchased the Gloria Rothstein show. And then, funny story, in 2006, I took my wife and kids out to the National in California. And I looked at my wife and I said, someday we're going to run this. And she said, oh, God, no. And then about 6-7 years ago, Joe and I are in Chicago. And I said to Joe, I'd like to run the National someday. And I said, Brian, I'd like to extend our hand and ask you to be a partner with us. And here we are now going forward with the National. We are excited as can be. We are hobbyists. We can't wait to move the National to the next level.
Love it. Can't wait. Can't wait either. You said next level, and we're going to get into it a little bit later as to what does that really mean, next level? What differences can we expect as a hobby and attendees of the show and vendors and corporations set up? What can we expect in the future? We will get to that, guys. Before we do, let's just say hello. We got Frank Estella in the house. Good evening, Frank. Looking forward to the show myself. JMF, what's going on? D, yeah, we'll have Paul Lesko on next week. Vintage card collector, should be a great show. Can't wait to hear their thoughts on the Atlantic City bribery to get the 2026 National. I think he's talking about the $1,000 per vendor per dealer. Would one of you like to speak to that right now? Joe, you have anything to say to that at this point?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a little bit of a misconception there. I mean, I guess just to that specific point, Atlantic City offered basically $1 million compensatory package to basically make up for the misgivings of the 2022 National. And when that was presented to the board of directors, what was decided was that a big portion of that would be divided up amongst the dealers. And in a roundabout figure, there's roughly 600 dealers, and $1,000 would have been credited back to each dealer towards their booth fee, and then the remaining $400,000 would have been used for different purposes to enhance the show in the areas it was deficient, such as Wi-Fi, for one. I know that was a major issue with the Atlantic City National. Parking was also a major issue with the Atlantic City National. Security was definitely something that was of concern for people. And then also, I believe, hotel costs. So the city was very much trying to make amends for what happened in 2022. And they certainly appreciated the crowd that we brought in and what our event brings to the city. So we felt as a management team obligated to bring that to the board and let them know about it. And ultimately the board decided from the 6 or 7 finalist cities that we got down to, which again, Jimmy and Brian can speak to a little bit later when we get there. But it's a bigger process than I think a lot of people kind of realize what the starting point is versus the finishing line. And, in a nutshell, because of that package, bribery, call it what you want. I don't see it that way, and I don't think Jimmy and Brian do. I think it was, really more meant to make good on something that they felt like they should have and could have done a lot better. So hopefully that gives some clarification there.
Yeah, you called it a compensatory package. I think that really explains or labels it astutely. Jimmy, Brian, anything to add to that on top of what Joe said?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about the selection process of cities if you want to go into that. How that.
You know what? Yeah. Please feel free to get into that right away. Yeah.
All right. So we start out looking for. The board has us go look at sites based on size, date availability is a range of dates we look at. We looked at 27 different sites, and we got down to 6 sites, which we gave to the board. The bylaws of the board right now, the bylaws for the national allows 3 sites to go out for vote for the dealers. So those 3 sites were Atlantic City. As Joe said, we thought it was worth bringing Atlantic City to them, Atlanta, and Chicago again. The dealers, when they picked their booths this year, when they picked their booths for the first time, we suggested, why don't the dealers pick their site when they pick their booths? The history of picking sites, the selection process, the turnback of the dealers, it was an old mail-in process. The turnback was very, very minimal as far as return. It was in the low percentages. So with people picking their booths at the time, voting when they picked their booths, that allowed them to then have a higher percentage. A mail-in process is now being done now out to the dealers that were not present. And in approximately 30 days to 45 days, you'll have the results of to which site will be the 2026 site. But again, backing up, the process of looking at the sites is 500,000 square feet, airport nearby, safety, hotels, and just on and on and on, and data availability. Some of the challenges we ran into is because we're the national and we move from city to city every year, you get a good city. They will have a show in there. Call it a car show, for example, an automobile car show. It may run year after year after year. So you show up once every 3 years, every 5 years, and you say, hey, give me prime dates in the middle of the summertime. And they say, no, we have Mr. Smith here that's here every year running a show. We can't throw Mr. Smith out to allow you in here. So that's some of the challenges we run against. The availability of convention centers size-wise and also date-wise. If you look online, a lot of convention centers say 1 million square feet, 800,000 square feet. The other problem is they're not contiguous space. They're multi-level. They're, you look like the Javits Center, for example. The biggest room, I think, is 300, correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, I think it's 340 or 370. And we need 500,000 square feet contiguous space to run a show right now with the way the shows have gone, with the way the shows have exploded. So there's a lot of challenges. So people say, how come you only down to the 3 sites again? Well, that's how you get down to the 3 sites again. It's a lot of challenges. It's not as easy as call up and book a facility and let's move in there.
You hear people all the time say they should do it in this city or they should do it there. People think it's just as easy as saying, let's just have it in this city or that city. Yeah. And what you're saying, Jim and Joe, and you too, Brian, silently, is that it's just not as easy as just, oh, let's pick a city and go do it there. There are restrictions, there's limitations in place. So that's understandable to me. We'll get a bit more into that a little bit later on in the show. I want to say hello to Jake Dahl. We got Baseball Mike. The professor, I have to thank the professor for really helping publicize this episode. So thank you to the professor. He says, looking forward to getting to know better this leadership team. Mark Santucci, good evening. Cage says, these guys' hobby history, that'll take 3 hours. Guys have over a century combined of hobby experience. We did get through it in a few minutes, but that was the abbreviated version for sure. JH says, is this considered the good old boy network in the hobby community? Now, I mean, there's people who like to talk about the good old boy network. Brian, I'm going to ask you to just talk a bit about that. Are you guys good old boys in the hobby, or do you consider yourselves the next wave of national management and promotions?
I mean, if you walked into the second room in Chicago, which was, the new side, I don't know what's going to happen over there. I mean, we were concerned with the growth of the room from 360,000 square feet to 560 plus or minus, whatever it was. And we walked over there and we saw that the other side of the show. And we said, "Oh my God, it is popping over here." And that was all new cards. It was all new card business. It was, I mean, listen, don't get me wrong. There was this, that, the other thing mixed inside there, but man, what an eye-opening experience that was. And you know, are we the good old boys? Yeah, sure. We have, you know, friends in the network. We've been around here for a long time, and you know, we've been doing all the rustic shows in the Northeast and that's the other thing. But this industry is just, it's so widespread in so many different areas. You can't be that. You can't you know, isolate yourself into that, especially as being you know, the management team of the National. We absolutely cannot be that. We have to embrace all sectors, whether it's our strength or whether it's not, or whether we get somebody else involved that is, and we have to pull all that together and just push it forward. That's my take on it. I hope I answered that correctly.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's, you know, it's I think it's somewhat of a tongue-in-cheek comment. So I think that your answer was wonderful. Hello to a collector's dream, Orlando, Mark Santucci. Good to see you. Piece of the Game says, "Congrats, fellas! Big East Coast National next week. Absolutely incredible autograph guest list. What a way to follow the National." Very nice. Hello to Victor, Mookie Chilson, Hockey Cards Plus. Daniel Brown says, "People complaining about Atlantic City literally are just upset about the traveling situations. All the other things are somewhat bogus." Daniel Busby says, "Please bring the National to Dallas." Like, we get all these requests all the time. It's not as simple as just, okay, let's have it in Dallas, but we'll hear a bit more about that shortly. Orlando would love to see it in Florida. Orlando, yes, please, as it's family friendly. Andrew says, "Well, if safety is one of the things you guys look at, how is Atlantic City safe?" And Vintage Car Collector echoes that, saying if safety is really a priority, Atlantic City should not even be considered. Do you guys want to speak to that? You said it was on the ballot again. I think the hobby feels that it isn't a safe place. I'll admit, I echo that sentiment myself. I don't feel safe there walking around by myself, which you shouldn't do, but I did at one point. Thoughts on that? I don't know who's best to ask about. Which of the three of you is most familiar with Atlantic City?
I mean, we all are, but I mean, anybody can answer this question. I mean, I'll just jump in because I opened my mouth. Listen, safety is our concern. When we sat down and we talked to you know, their management team about needs and what happened and how and why, you know, their list was the same list as ours, and I can't even stress how serious we were and how concerned we were about all the different, you know, things that occurred in 2022 and what bothered us and what needed to be fixed. And they were there at every turn saying, "This will never happen again." And we pounded the narrative, and we would not have brought the solution that came into place to the board, to the dealers, if we didn't feel comfortable that we could get it done. And in short, that's exactly what we did. So they said that they would absolutely improve parking lots, improve police, put people out there in suits and waving flashlights and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it would be our job to go down there and look and what is this block and what is this and what's that, and repair and add and do this and do that. So, you know, I get it. Any major city has its issues, and I get Atlantic City has its stigma. I think we can police it. I think we can make it a much more safer place. We're fully aware of, you know, the valuables that people carry and the importance that it is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I'd like to actually just add in the fact, you know, and just touch back a little bit on what Jimmy spoke to earlier about the 27 cities. I mean, one of the things that I think I can say openly here is that city number 27 was Atlantic City. And what I mean by that is that Atlantic City was never even on our initial list. And what I can tell you is all of the West Coast cities that you can imagine that people have spoken to and want to see the National at were on our immediate list. the other cities such as Arizona and Dallas and Houston and more centrally located, convenient to the West Coast cities were top priority for us. And we started the process, conquer and divide. We wrote our initial list of cities. We hit our criterias, which Jimmy spoke to, about size of building being the main one, closeness to an airport being secondary. We use the term beds for heads, meaning hotel rooms, enough beds for the people to lay down in, and then obviously safety. Those are the paramount four initial, and then also population. Population is 5. What is the radius population of 200 miles of the city that we're thinking about? But just touching back a little bit to where Brian was, of course we were concerned with Atlantic City. We know about some of the unfortunate things that happened in Atlantic City, and as Brian already stated, that was one of their biggest bullet points. Was we are absolutely going to have uniformed officers everywhere you look. Not just outside the convention center, but up the street, down the street, left of the street, right of the street. And these are their assurances to us. And again, all that came from that meeting, what I want to convey to your audience and to the, everyone that attends the National and is in our hobby, is all that meeting did was get Atlantic City in the conversation. And then from that point, once their date became available, we added them into the list of possibilities to present to the board. And the other thing I can share with you is when we presented that to the board, they had the same reaction that a lot of your audience has. They weren't happy either. But once they stepped away from our conference call and digested what the actual offer was and how much it was going to benefit the vendors, they ultimately made the decision that, yes, we should put this city in contention. And so one of the other things, because there was another city that we all really liked, tried to lobby for, was adding a 4th city. So that was one of the things that we tried to do. For 43 years, there's bylaws, and there's the National has run a certain way, okay? And you have the management team, and then you have the board of directors, and the board of directors follows the guidelines of the bylaws, and the management team adheres to that as well. But we also have the ability to recommend adjustments and say, we think this should be relooked at. And we feel, so one of the things that we did was suggest, hey, why don't we just go to a 4th city, since Atlantic City, is a very controversial city, so that we can include this 4th city. And it's just a vote, right? It's just very simple. Some people voted yes, let's do it, and some people voted no. So the bylaw didn't change this year. Will that change in the future where we have 4 choices? Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But the most important thing that we're trying to do here is give you guys some transparency and sort of let you know the inner workings and sort of what sort of our job is, in relation to the National, and how, we're working for the dealers, we're working for the collectors, we're working for the betterment of the hobby and the growth of the hobby. Like, that is our main objective. And so while Atlantic City might be a little bit unfavorable, and it may have some disdain from bad experiences from people, we understand that. But at that same breath, we also felt that what they were offering was valid enough to bring to the table. And like I said, ultimately, the board then becomes in control of that decision, whether that gets put on the ballot or not. So I hope that speaks to the concerns there, because safety is a concern in any city we go to. Luckily in Chicago, we're outside of Chicago, but Chicago is not a very safe city either in certain areas, and unfortunately neither are a lot of big cities in the United States if you're in bad areas of those cities. But Chicago happens to be safe in that respect because it's in Rosemont. So
Deep Value Investor here says, why not just do Chicago every year? And I've been known to say that myself. And, people often say, well, it's called the National. You need to have it in various cities. And my response is, it's just a brand. It doesn't necessarily need to be represented in every region of the U.S. Maybe it does, though. Those are just my thoughts. And any thoughts, even Jim, let's go to you, Jim Ryan, for a moment. Any thoughts on just having the show in Chicago every year? Is that an option? And if not, why not?
So the Chicago is every other year automatically. Every other year, Chicago is. Other than that, it goes up for vote for the dealers to vote on. So ultimately, the dealers have the selection to put it in Chicago every year if Chicago makes the vote every year. So the dealers can vote on it. Like one of the options for 2026 is Chicago. So there is a chance you could have 26, 27 in Chicago. You get back-to-back years.
Okay. Speaking of, the vendors having the option to vote, we're going to bring on Leighton Sheldon for what Leighton and I call the vintage spotlight, but we're going to a bit of a different approach. I want Leighton to come on and be a representative, and he doesn't know this yet, be a representative of the dealers, the vendors that are set up there. He's been set up there for many years with his Just Collecting Vintage Breaks, businesses, sponsors of Sports Cards Live. Let's bring Leighton on. First of all, I think you guys all know Leighton. And just before anyone says anything, the original plan was that we weren't going to have five of us on the screen. Guys, we're doing it. We're doing 5 of us on the screen now. Leighton, welcome back to the show. Good to see you again. Say hello to your friends up on the screen with you.
Evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
Hey,
buddy.
How are you, buddy?
Oh, doing well, thanks.
Good.
So, Leighton, thanks for coming on, fellas. Thanks for having Leighton join us on the show. And Leighton, anything that you'd like to ask the fellas, the new management and promotions team of the National, as a vendor who's been setting up there for years and who also has set up at the other shows that these guys manage and promote?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first thing I want to say is amazing job again this year. Really excited about, you guys taking over. And I think Joe said it best. For those that don't really know, I'm not on the inner workings of any of it, but the gentlemen you see in front of us are really for the betterment of the dealers, the experience of the convention. And so when you look at what happened this year, when, for whatever it's worth, I don't know if everyone remembers, but I do, 30 to 60 days before the National, people were worried about, was it going to be well attended? People worried about what cards were going to be selling. People were worried about everything and anything related to the dip in sports cards. And so I was very grateful to be part of it. Thanks, gentlemen, for pulling off another great show. And I'm really excited that we're going to be in your hands in the future. So putting all of that aside, I myself was a little bit unsure this year, and I feel like other vendors and maybe new vendors might have a question about this. So can one of you gentlemen explain to, let's say, someone who is a longtime vendor like myself, or a first or second time vendor who's looking to kind of become part of the mix and get a booth at the National, how does the vendor priority work?
Who's best? Brian, you want to speak to that?
Jim and Joe are definitely better at this one. I'll let them do that.
Yeah, Jimmy, you want to take that one?
I'll take this one. Yeah. So basically, the National's been running for 43 years. So the highest when you set up at the National as a vendor, you get a priority point for every year. So you accrue a priority point. So there are people out there that have done 43 Nationals, and every year you get one. We sold out this year going into Cleveland at priority 3. Okay, so the process is the day of the 2 mornings, Friday and Saturday. You go up at certain times. You pick your booths. You go up to a booth map. Priority 43s go first. Priority 42s, 41s, 40s, and so on. Till the room gets filled up. There are certain rules in place that dealers are only allowed to pick so many booths. I think if you're priority 0 to 3, you only get to pick 1 booth. Correct me if I'm wrong anywhere here, guys. Other priorities, some people are grandfathered in at 4 booths. Otherwise, the max is 2 booths per person to pick. But that's how the priority system works. You accrue a point every time you do a show. It's hard right now for new people to break in. We're selling out at priority, like I said, priority 3. 6, 7, 8, 10 years ago, this wasn't a problem. Booths were available. I could even throw this out there. We talked about this earlier, is that I can remember the existing team coming to our shows to get vendors for the National. Now with the influx, the way that the National's blown up here, it's harder to crack into. The waiting list right now is currently probably a couple hundred people long. So
one of the things I just want to add to what Jimmy was saying there too about the priorities, and this will speak to some of the vendors that are familiar with the process and maybe are kind of lower on the scale. One of our jobs and one of the jobs that the board, is implementing and enforcing going forward is there's a lot of chatter out there about booths being shared, booths being split, booths being sold. And so that process is being looked at and addressed. And what the positive that's going to come out of that is basically you're only supposed to pick booths that you're going to set up your own merchandise in. And you're going to be the primary there, involved in the sales and the execution of everything inside of your booth. And if that's in violation, meaning you're selling your booth, you're selling space, that's really against policy. And whether it's been enforced in the past or not, it is something that is going to be different going forward. And that is going to be beneficial to all of the new vendors trying to get in and get space. Mm-hmm. And with anything where there's massive sweeping change like that, there's going to be some people that are not going to be happy about it, but there's also going to be a lot of people that have been patiently waiting on the outside coming in that are going to be happy about it. So that is one of the things, again, speaking to the point of being transparent and the betterment of the hobby and the growth of the hobby that, we'll be involved in, as well as the board. And, that is something that is a bylaw of the National. So, hopefully that speaks to a little bit of the detail of priority and sort of how it all works on the inner working side of things.
One thing that I was encouraged by that you said a little bit ago, actually, I don't remember if it was you, Joe, or Jimmy, that these bylaws have been in place for a long time. And apparently it sounds like they can be changed with board of director approval. And so that's interesting. And I think it's good news, because if these bylaws have been around for 30, 40 years, it's likely they're outdated by now, I would think, personally, just my personal opinion. So I'm encouraged that you guys are looking at these, scrutinizing the bylaws and going to go through the proper channels with the board of directors to perhaps update the ones that need to be updated. Leighton, are you willing to tell us what city you voted for 2026?
Absolutely. Yeah. So to be very clear, I voted for Chicago every year.
Yeah.
And to be clear, I'm not from Chicago. I'm not getting paid by Chicago or anyone related to Chicago to say this. I just think, in my experience, that it's been the most consistent in Chicago. And, Joe, I think you brought up a really good point. No matter where you go, you have to have your wits about you. So if it ends up in Atlantic City, if it ends up in a different city that maybe isn't the top of your hit list, keep in mind that wherever you go, you got to keep your wits about you. But I did vote for Chicago for as many years as they would let me vote for it. I did want to throw out a question. I feel like, even though I may have a handle on the answer, I feel like a lot of folks who are going to the National want to know this. So if I could ask this, I'd very much appreciate it, Jeremy.
Please, Leighton, let's hear the question.
Great. So, gang, a lot of folks are like, hey, the National's awesome. It's expanding. There's more great stuff than ever. So twofold. One, are you talking about making the show longer to the general public so they can consume all of the booths? And then two, are you also either looking forward to trying to implement this, or have thought about, from other people suggesting this, organizing the show in such a way where there might be a vintage area, there might be a modern area, there already is a corporate area, so on and so forth? I want to hear what you gentlemen have to say, and I know the audience does as well.
Joe, are you the best for that one? Or do you want to pass it off to Jimmy or Brian?
I'll give that to Jimmy. Yeah, Jimmy was I think speaking with you a little bit about, I think the Cleveland floor plan. So maybe he can jump in there with that.
Yeah, so Leighton, because the way the priority system works now, people have a priority 43, 42, 41. They want those front booths. So it'd be very hard to go and organize the show by new cards, memorabilia, old cards. Okay, so if you noticed when you did your contract this year, something we put in place this year on the contract, on the bottom of it, it had circle what you sell, right? So circle what you sell. That is going to be a sort criteria that we're going to use to organize data to customers coming into the show. So a customer will be able to look and see where a vintage card dealer is, where a new card dealer is. Thought process behind that is you get a father and son that come in, for argument's sake. Father likes old cards, son likes new cards. He can now go ahead and look and see where the old card dealers, where the new card dealers for my son. That will help straighten out a little bit of find and seek, as opposed to organizing the booths around the room by categories. So does that answer the question a little bit for you there?
I mean, this thing is a great question. And since I was kind of, in the war room, if you will, selecting my own booths, I kind of had a feeling that was the answer. But I wanted folks, Jimmy, that, maybe aren't privy to being part of the lottery to understand why it really is like a colossal, almost impossible task. But I commend you guys because I did see that on the contract. Yeah, listen, anything and everything you can do to help the consumer enjoy the convention, which is just growing in enormity, I think is great.
All right.
And I think the Cleveland floor plan will also, once we get to that point of knowing that, we'll show you that corporate, is kind of sectioned off in a way differently than Chicago, where the card show itself is prominent and first and foremost. And then, there'll be a technology piece, which, will probably Brian heads up our technology side of things. And I don't think we're going to really unveil exactly details. But what I can tell you is some of what Leighton had to say about sectioning things will be solved through technology. And I think people can sort of figure out what that'll be with maps and ways to actually pull up the floor plan and be able to sort with the data that Jimmy was talking about and make it much easier, along with signage. So there'll be vast improvements in those areas, I'm confident. And again, Brian is the technology wizard for us, and he'll be spearheading, a lot of that stuff. But a lot of those things will be coming in the coming months. So.
All right. Well, thanks for answering Leighton's questions. Leighton, anything else you wanted to mention? I'll let everybody know, guys. Check out the ticker. Follow Leighton on Instagram at Leighton_Sheldon and just_collect, and listen to his podcast, Trading Card Therapy. Leighton, always great to have you. Any parting words?
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, because I know there's a lot of, as you mentioned, fathers and sons and maybe daughters and moms out there that want to go next year. So a buddy of mine just texted me the other day, Joe, and said, hey, I want to go next year. What do I do? And of course, I send him to the website, nscccShow.com. He comes back to me with like 11 questions. So I think it would be really helpful, even for those who've maybe been to the National before but haven't been recent. It's a lot busier than ever. So gang, can you give just a couple quick tips to the folks out there who want to go next year to Cleveland? They're not buying a booth, right? They simply just want to attend the show for either one or several days, and they're going to do it either with their friends, their loved ones, etc. What do you guys think?
Brian, you want to give it a chance?
Yeah, I mean, come. But, listen, the outreach is an area where we know we need to make strides in, from in-person to extending it through other, web sources, through our own data, through our own website, through our own email channels. I think we need to get a little more informative. We need to put those, top 5 questions, the answers out there, and, make it, comfortable. and just spread that word. That's one of the big key initiatives, is to become more transparent with everybody, the dealers, the consumers, the world, and that's one of our big goals. So yeah, I think we need to get out there and touch people more and just give them more information, and that will come probably by the time what we consider second quarter. We still have to transfer some more data internally, but that's a key area that we need to work on.
Thank you, Brian. Leighton, thank you for joining.
Thanks, gentlemen. It was great seeing you guys.
We'll see you back next week, Leighton. Thanks,
Leighton.
buddy.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we've got lots of questions, lots of comments coming through, so I'm going to run through a bunch of them, and we'll just take them one at a time. Mitch, good evening to you. Basketball Card Guy says, always a great show, no matter where it is. The collectors show up. I mean, we can attest that even if it's in Atlantic City, even though we hope it's not ever again in Atlantic City. Ladies Man says National to Vegas. Sports Card Lesson, Big Ken. Hey, fellas, looking forward to this episode all week. And I do know I am behind in the comments, guys, but that's what's going to happen. Sandra Sandora says the National just ended and you have had time to look back on it. Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. What things did you see or hear that you would believe needs to be fixed, and how would you go about doing that? Now, obviously, this is a question, guys, that we have bullet points on some of these things. People talk about Wi-Fi. They talk about air conditioning, lack of signage for booths. I had a lot of trouble finding the booths I wanted to go to, and I think booth signage really needs to be improved. We've already talked about segmenting different genres of merchandise into certain areas. I think a lot of people would like that. I think there are also challenges with that. GM10 did a great job with a virtual or a digital floor map this year, and I don't know what their involvement was, but they did that. Do you guys want to just speak to a couple of those things, perhaps? The better booth signage, is that something that we're going to see improved next year and moving forward? Joe?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I mean, feedback is fantastic. I mean, we had a team on the floor all week long, taking notes from things like, what you're touching on now to strength of corporate booths, anything from details of exactly what you're speaking to, how easy was the show to navigate, what were the difficulties, what were the positives, what were the negatives. I mean, we have notes down to aisle sizes, we have notes down to, functionality of being able to get from room to room. And for us, again, with the Cleveland floor plan being so much cleaner and being a rectangle and kind of us boxing off corporate and some of the other pavilions like the Box Break Pavilion and the TriStar Pavilion, what I think people are going to see is, regardless of what city it's being held in, I think people are going to see a lot cleaner experience and a lot easier to navigate. And yes, of course, there'll be improved signage and navigation tools. Again, that touches on Brian's technology area, which again, that's a few months in the works, but we'll be unveiling a lot of information, like Brian said, second and third quarter, as we get into the end of this year and the beginning of next year, to prep people well in advance of all the improvements that are going to be made to make it easier to, we want people to really, really enjoy the Nationals. So we're looking at all aspects of it.
So last year in Atlantic City, the big problem was Wi-Fi. This year in Chicago, the big problem was air conditioning. I think those are two factors that you guys are obviously going to be working with the Cleveland Convention Center and the Chicago Convention Center the year after that, and wherever we end up in 2026. But those are things that you know are potential issues. How are you guys looking forward and trying to speculate what else could go wrong? What else could go wrong at this show? And what can we do to be proactive to mitigate the risk that something goes wrong? That we weren't expecting the Wi-Fi not to work in Atlantic City. We were not expecting the air conditioning to be overpowered in Chicago a couple weekends ago. What are you guys doing to speculate, to kind of really dig in and look for something that could go wrong so that you can mitigate it and try to avoid it altogether. Brian,
Let me jump in here. So I mean, listen, air conditioning, I don't know if we're supposed to go on people's roofs and and check how much freon are in their units or measure their units out. I mean, that might be a little over and above. But the as far as Wi-Fi goes, there's metrics in place that explain how many users you're going to have and what you're going to do, and what kind of bandwidth we have, and cell phone usage and so on and so forth. So without boring everybody there, we are all over that for Cleveland, and that was our biggest ask walking in there. And we went in with some guidelines. They came out, they saw what we did in Chicago. The team that hosts internet for Cleveland was on site walking with us, and I said, "Do you see this? Do you see that? Do you touch this? Do you know this? The blah 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 blah." And we are there. In short, I can share this with you. We're going to double the internet capabilities in Cleveland from what we had in Chicago in 2023. So in 2024, we're going to have double the bandwidth there. We're going to manage that by splitting the signal throughout based on all the different needs that we have. We will not have any internet issues there in Cleveland, period. Air conditioning, different story. But as far as technology goes, covered.
Good to hear.
And and the air conditioning, I can speak to that just a little bit. A lot of that was logistical. And what I mean by that was the corporate build out was massive. And just to give some perspective, corporate space at the National has doubled since 2021. Massive explosion in square footage in corporate space. If anybody remembers the last 3 Nationals, there were no booths like what we had this year in 2021. I mean, Golden's booth was amazing. Fanatics booth, amazing. Tops. And when I say amazing, I'm just talking about size and height. And so what happened there, because we got a full explanation from the building manager in Chicago, was that realistically they needed more time to build out the corporate space than they allowed for, because they didn't even really have communication and understanding of how complex the build outs were going to be. And what happens in those instances is they don't use just one subcontractor to build those massive build outs. There's multiple subcontractors in there. So that also means that there's multiple 18-wheelers, multiple large doors being opened for way too long. And in essence, it was a little bit of a perfect storm, because everybody does acknowledge that there was a massive heat wave with a heat index of 106 and 108 back-to-back days when everybody was moving in. And those doors being open those days, allowing all that humidity in there, was the biggest catalyst to not allowing the building to cool down. And if there were a buffer of an additional day earlier, and the build outs and all that material and merchandise was brought in one day earlier, a lot of those problems would have solved themselves, because those doors would not have been open so long. So to your point, and you asking us, do we have plans in place? Well, thankfully, we've been paying attention now, because one of the things I don't think we spoke to was we've been behind the scenes now for about 18 months, getting acclimated, figuring out what our game plans were going to be, flying to different cities, looking at locations, taking notes, being involved in not only this year's National behind the scenes, but last year's Atlantic City National. So there's been a lot of prep work on our part, bringing us up to speed. And again, our knowledge and experience in this space is decades of experience on a smaller scale. Granted, maybe our facilities are 100,000 square feet, and now we're dealing with 500,000 square feet, but you do still understand the problems. And, one of the things I did want to mention, one of the earlier questions that was asked about this was, what are we doing? We're ramping up our staff in every possible area that you can think of to help handle situations, whether it be customer service, whether it be security, whether it be, just overall show management and knowledgeable people in place to help, facilitate answers for people. I think that's the biggest thing that you'll see is the level of detail that we hope to achieve going forward to bring a great experience to everybody. That's our number one goal.
Sounds good. Sounds good to me. Appreciate that, Joe. I think everyone's going to appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go through some more questions. A couple of these are going to touch on Atlantic City. Then we're not going to talk about Atlantic City anymore because chances are we're not going back there anyway. But Vintage Card Collector says many people simply will not go back to Atlantic City. Go there. Sales will be down far more than $1,000 per deal that the dealers will receive. So there you go. We're probably not going anyway. Andrew Bukowski says, was it ever addressed why the Atlantic City tourist website said they are indeed hosting the National in 2026? Not next year, Andrew, but in 2026, I believe, is when they said that. Joe, Jimmy, who's best to respond to this one?
Jimmy can get that one. Yeah.
I'll touch on this one. Okay, so when you go out and you look at facilities and you put what they call a soft hold on a facility, all the facilities we went out to that we presented here for the board put a soft hold on. So Atlantic City put a soft hold on, internal hold on the calendar. Hey, don't sell these dates. We have something in the works. Well, unfortunately, that soft hold, instead of being just internally, they went and hit it to the public website too. That's what happens. They came to the dealer meeting. They apologized right off the get-go for it happening. Said, we're sorry. Should never hit the public. It was supposed to be an internal calendar, and it went to the public calendar instead. That's what simple mistake. That's what happened.
And then somebody saw that, and then it just traveled through the hobby.
Correct.
All right. Well, thank you. Very simple explanation to a big conspiracy theory out there. Thanks for addressing that, Jimmy. Steve Menzie, who runs the Canadian Sports Card Expo, says Atlantic City is so difficult to get to even without the other negatives. Not sure why it is even on the considered set. That said, pretty sure dealers will not vote to go back there anytime soon. I think that's just the truth right there. Okay, Wesley, a little while ago, asked us who is actually on the board of directors.
All right.
Who wants to take that one? Is that you, Joe? Jimmy? Go ahead, Jimmy.
I'll speak to this one. So the board is made up of 12 members that were dealers. I believe it's 5 or 6 years you have to be a dealer at the National, and then you can be voted into the board. They have elections every so many years. There are certain terms set up for certain people. Al Dorso is the current president of the board right now, and Chip Brady is the current vice president of the board. And there are 10 other individuals.
And this is Al Dorso's first year as president, isn't that correct?
That is, he was elected last year in Atlantic City. At their board meeting their internal board meeting they had last year in Atlantic City, he was elected there as president. So I guess he's been president now for about a year.
And Jimmy, does the board of directors then appoint the management team? And that is you guys, you are the new management team taking over. And if so, are you guys signed to a term, a certain amount of years? How often are you guys going to be reviewed by the board of directors, or what's your expectation as to how long you'll be doing this?
We are indeed picked by the board. Okay. We have a long-term multi-year contract. We leave it at that.
Okay. All right, cool. Simon asked, do dealers pay the same rate across the board, or do the dealers with seniority also get a reduced rate?
Same
Brian?
rate.
Oh, go ahead, Jimmy.
I'm sorry. Same rate across the board. Everybody pays the same, whether in front of the room or the back of the room.
Thank you. Michael Ham asked, if you are selling out so quickly, shouldn't the National be growing and not shrinking? Because, and this is in response to the fact that we came from just shy of 600,000 square feet in Chicago, and we're moving to, I forget, 4, 5, less square feet. Say again?
420 we're going to.
We're going from about just under 600 down to 420. Right. Joe, looks like you're about to jump in. Why don't you address the question?
Yeah, I mean, that one is a very valid question, but because of the size, so there's a couple things I actually want to blend in here too. Because of the size of the National now, and always, the National is picked out 3 years in advance. So if we rewind to 3 years ago from today, we go to August what are we, 12th, 2020, we were all in the middle of COVID sitting in our houses. And there was no way to know at all that the explosion that has happened over the last 3 years was going to happen. With that being said, we're very lucky, and that's also one of the reasons that Chicago is earmarked as an every other year city and event space, because Chicago has the ability to expand, and Chicago reserves the entire building for us. So that's what allowed for this year's expansion. And then I'm going to I'm going to say one more thing about the national, the traveling national, and then I'm going to give that back to Jimmy, because he actually knows a little bit more of the data as far as total booths and square footage. And, we actually are going to be the second largest national next to this year's national, even though where there's a reduction, even though there'll be some less dealer booth space, even though there'll be some less corporate, it will actually be the next largest national to the 2023 national. And the point I wanted to touch on, about somebody had touched on earlier, the national is called the national. Why doesn't it travel everywhere? Well, the national started 43 years ago, and I don't know the exact square footage of the building, but let's just say it was very small when the national started. So when you have a very small convention, you can absolutely move anywhere you want. If we even got down into the 250,000 square foot size, our city list would be endless. The problem is when you get north of 400 to 450,000 continuous, and continuous is the key word here. The national doesn't want the show to be on different floors or in different sections of the building. The ideal national setting is a perfect rectangle. So when you carve out 400, let's say 400 to 450,000 square feet, that limits your cities and buildings very dramatically. And then, as Jimmy spoke to earlier, the minute you tell them that you're a transient vendor, meaning that you're not coming back year after year and you're going to lock in, 50% of those buildings basically tell you, I'm sorry, we don't have the space for you. But I'll hand it over to Jimmy, because he can speak a little bit more to the detail of what I said earlier about the national being next year's 2024 being the largest next to Chicago. So,
and Jimmy, we can also take this time to take a look at the floor plan when you're done your opening comments here.
Sure. Okay, so Chicago prior to this year used 336,000 square feet. This year they blew up to 560,000 square feet. Cleveland's building is going to be 420,000 square feet. So as Joe stated before, other than this year had about, don't know the exact booth count, but about 660, 670 booths. Cleveland's going to have 608 booths, I believe. Again, I might be off by one or two. We moved the floor plan around a little bit. Approximately over 600 booths. Atlantic City only had 565 booths. So Cleveland will be the second largest national that's ever been run. Okay, the nice, when you want to flop it up later on, the nice thing about Cleveland is it is a rectangle, like Joe said. The corporates are in one area, autograph pavilions in another area, case breaks another area. And the show is really supposed to be about the dealers. The whole thing about the national is the show is about the dealers. It's owned by the dealers. It's the dealers. So the dealers are in the front of the show. They're in the middle of the show. It's a perfect rectangle for everybody to go right through the show. Go right to the dealers. But again, this will be the second largest national.
All right. And I think it's important that everybody realize that you guys, being the new management and promotions team, did not select Cleveland. You inherited Cleveland this time for 2023. I got to tell you, it's my favorite build. Well, the old version of the building was my favorite venue for the national as far as buildings go, but I do like Rosemont as a location overall the best myself. Thank you for those answers to Michael Ham's question. Thank you, Michael Ham, for the question. Steve Menzies says, good luck, guys. It's a lot of talent and passion in the new management team. Collector's Dream, Orlando says, would you consider selling booths by the day? Some dealers are ready to leave on Saturday and Sunday, and new dealers can come in. What do you think of that, Joe? I see you nodding. Brian, Jimmy, any thoughts? I'll I'll see who's going to open their lips first to see who's best to answer this one. Joe, why don't we start with you?
Okay, sure. I mean, very interesting, point. I just don't see how it works that way, because that would actually fall into a current bylaw violation of sharing or splitting booths. The national holds itself to the booth holder or the secondary person. So in order for that to happen, that would be opening up a pretty big can of worms, to the point of a lot of dealers being ready to leave after Saturday. One of the subtle things that's happened for 2024, which will make some people happy, is that we've gotten approved to shorten the hours from 10 to 5 on Sunday to 10 to 4, and it's a step in the right direction. Okay, we have more ambition than that, but we're moving the needle, which is what's important. And we also know that how everybody is pretty spent on Sunday, and we're also actually looking at the front part of the show and the way the show launches as well. And there's nothing to unveil as far as what our plans are, but we're conscious of the fact that there's areas of deficiency in the way the flow of the show is. It's very front end loaded, and there's exhaustion that kicks in by the weekend. So that's something that we're, as a team, sitting and talking about and discussing options, and having meetings and sessions just on that specific topic alone. So, what we would like to see is the energy level on Sunday afternoon. Let's be realistic, at 1:00 in the afternoon, be the same as it is as Friday at 1:00. And there's a path to that, and there are some things that we can implement that will encourage, not only attendance, but energy in the room. And that's part of our job as the management promotions team, is to be creative and think outside the box and bring things to the table that haven't been thought of. So, I do like the creativity of that gentleman's comment, although I just don't see it as being realistic to implement in the way our structure is.
Yeah, I think even I see issues with move in and move out, kind of, in the middle of days, at the end of the day, the beginning of the next day. It might be tough to do that logistically, physically, from a physical logistic perspective. And then you mentioned the bylaws again. Are these bylaws something that I could go read somewhere? Are these open to the public, or is this a private set of bylaws?
It is private.
And why is that?
Don't know the answer to that. I'd have to get back to you on that. I'm happy to, but it is a private set of bylaws.
Okay. Well, appreciate the your honesty on that, and not that I would expect you not to be, but I can see that. I can see that being a bone of contention with some people in the hobby. So maybe we'll find out why eventually. All right. Simon said, I love the joy Leighton had in announcing that he votes for Chicago every year. JH here says, I've heard many of the highest priority attendees don't sell at their booths. They just set up the same stuff since 1975 and hang out for the week. Brian, I see you kind of responding to that. Why don't you just speak to that?
Look, I get it. You're a dealer, you've been around for 40 years, maybe you're older in age, maybe you're not working, as diligent, as you once did. But that's, maybe you earned it, I get it. You're young, you're coming in the hobby, you want to take it over and you want the primary spot in the room. And, the business just isn't set up that way. It's just, there's a priority level and, you earn it. And that's just how things go. And, when you've been there 43 years or 37 or, whatever it may be, you earn that right to, display as you want. I get it. I get the rub, but, I also get the satisfaction in, being a legacy name in the business. So, it goes both ways.
Well, let's, appreciate that, Brian. As a follow-up, Fire Sports Card says hello to all of us. How is the process, or what is the process of getting on the wait list to become a vendor?
I'll take
Hang
it.
on, Jim.
Yeah, sure. So you have to go to the website and fill out a letter of intent. You download a letter of intent off the website, you send it in, and you put on the waiting list from that. A letter of intent basically says you're requesting to be put on a wait list and requesting to be considered to set up at a national. So it's a full letter of intent you fill out.
And is that a standard form that you just put your name?
Correct. You download it right off the website, right off the SCC website.
Is it something that you have to sell yourselves to the management team or the board, or is it just simply, here's my name, my phone number, my email address, and please consider me?
It's basically all your contact information and what kind of boots you're requesting, how many boots you're requesting, and it's anything other than that.
All right, thank you.
It's a one-page document.
Awesome. Okay, back to the two comments that came in here. First, Michael Ham says the layout, mapping, and signage has to be improved. We've talked about that. This year was not very friendly. I agree with that. Maybe a color map or search by company versus booth number. I also want to bring up Vintage Card Collector's comment. Please give us a phone app to navigate the show floor. We've talked about that. Brian, you're the tech guy on the team, so there will be advancements from what we've seen. Ready for next year. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, listen, an app's easy. It's easily doable. Again, what are we going to do? In what order we're going to do it in? Every facet. I guess the most important thing here is that, everything that concerns the collector concerns us, both as we are dealers and we're promoters and we promoted our own shows, and we want to touch all these things. We're going to touch them all. What order they're going to go in and when they're going to get done, I don't know. We got a lot of things that we have that we want to do, that we feel everything's important. So we're going to go at them. But yes, to build an app, get a floor plan on there, get a dealer list of names, sortable, by which sort criteria you want to sort by. It's not impossible. It could very easily be done. Have we talked about when we're going to do it yet? No. We got other things in front of us right now, but can we get it done before the show starts? Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Well, Chad Shipper says that the GM10 map on their site was great for the show in Chicago this last week, and I thought they did a great job. I don't know if they're on your radar, but may as well put them on it if we can do that here right now. Good people behind the GM10 offering. Vintage Card Collector says, I don't really like the answer on longevity. Many of those dealers add nothing to the show. That should be a concern to the new team. Most everyone would love to see them go. I'm just reading that out loud. No need to respond, fellas. I think you guys have that in mind already. Okay. The professor here says that several content creators have said they are not hopeful for changes because the board is made up of predominantly dealers who have longstanding views that they do not want to change. Any comments on that? We don't have the board of directors here with us tonight. We have you guys. Joe, can you address that, please?
Yeah. First of all, I want to give a lot of credit and thanks to the board. They take recently a lot of heat. With the changeover of management. We went to the board and told them one of the things that we really wanted to do was, give transparency to the dealers and the collectors. The board is volunteer, and they put in a lot of hours. And when you're walking in the national and you're going to get your dealer packet or you're going to buy admission tickets, those are all volunteers. And the dealers know this. Those are all board members. They're there. Serving the show, donating their time. They get very minimal compensation, very, very minimal compensation. They're required to have meetings throughout the year. There's a lot of good that they do too. And there's a lot of focus on negativity, not only, in comments, on shows like this, but in other broadcasts that I've watched. I do want to, make it known that they're all really good people trying to do the best that they can. And whether there's disagreements and feelings that there needs to be change, what I can share with you is the opportunity for any dealer that has a priority 5 or above has always been there to walk into the dealer meeting that happens every single year, and you get it in your packet weeks, if not months before the show. you can put your name down there and you can say, I would like to be on the board and I would like to help make a difference because I'm passionate about this hobby and I want to see this hobby move forward and I want to see it grow. But the truth of the matter is, much like the voting for the city, which Jimmy touched on earlier, the dealer meeting year over year is very much the same. It's pretty much the same couple of dozen people there, and there's a lot of complaining after the fact. So what I would encourage everyone to do, if nothing else, even if you're not motivated to run for the board and become a hands-on member of the team, come to the dealer meeting. See what it's all about. It's really not that long. It really is about an hour long, probably not even. The portion that we're there, meaning the public, the board actually has a closed door meeting after the vote for the board members. But every single year of the National, there are multiple seats up. I believe I'm correct in that. There are multiple seats of the board up for changeover. And it's designed that way to encourage fresh people in the board. So when I see comments and hear comments that the board is the same old guard, it's the good old boys club, well, that's simply because new people are not going in and running for it and making themselves known to the community that they want to be a part of it. So I would rather take the positive side of it and encourage people to not only, if you feel the passion to do it, run for the board and help make a difference, because we do want to hear good, smart people that have good ideas. But come to the meeting, place a vote for someone, encourage one of your friends to run if you don't have the ability to do it. So we encourage, as much as we're providing transparency, and that's our goal, we encourage more involvement, because more involvement can help promote positive change in the light that we all want to see it in. And just as much as the board is doing their very best, that's the same thing that you're going to get from Brian and Jimmy and myself. There are going to be decisions and things that we do that people are maybe not going to find in favor of, but our intentions are good, and to move everything forward and to keep this growth and enjoy what this community is bringing to the table. Because I got to tell you, when Jimmy, Brian, and myself walked around the room, we were blown away by the energy level and the thought process that a lot of the dealers and the corporates put into the space, and it really wasn't connected yet. And I think that's sort of what Brian was touching on earlier, is he's going to help create that connectivity between the independent corporates going out and doing great things, and what we can actually do as a team. And so these conversations that we're having here and these comments are all very, very valuable. But what I do want to say is, don't just be a Monday morning quarterback and sit there and critique everything that has happened and is happening. Roll up your sleeves, get involved. And even if that means you want to send suggestion lists to the NSCC general mailbox, send it to attention Jimmy, Joe, and Brian, and say, hey guys, listen, I just had these ideas. I want to share them with you. I promise you, we'll likely get back to you, like personally via email, but we will definitely take a look at what everyone has to say and consider it and see the value in it. So, hopefully that's helpful there.
I think it is. Thank you, Joe. I want to say good evening to Mike and Jesse from Sports Cards Nonsense. They have a very, very important question. They say, is there a better looking bald man in the hobby than Jeremy Lee? Honest question. I mean, you got Filmington. He's a good looking guy. You got Rob Gerard, the sports card therapist. A couple of really handsome fellas right there. Sports Cards Nonsense. Always good to see you fellas with us here. Deep Value Investor says, I bet 5 years ago these guys would have never imagined being on a show like this. Peak hobby. The hobby is growing. Can you guys just kind of nod? Could you have imagined this 5 years ago?
Yeah, of course.
No.
Never imagined it.
Punt Pass Click says that the form to apply to be a vendor is simple. So that's nice to hear.
Yep.
Bob's Big Boy says, is it accurate that the National is a nonprofit organization? Can accelerated growth and a rapid influx of revenue due to record attendance and corporate participation cause that status to change? And related to that, we have an awkward question from Simon. He says, time for an awkward question. The National is a nonprofit. I find it hard to believe Chicago and AC in 2022 didn't make a profit. Where does that profit go? Who's best to Joe? I see you getting ready.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that that's a board question, because the board is in control of all the administrative aspects of the show. So that, we're a hired management team, contracted, and that anything related to profitability, nonprofit status is going to be a board question that would be better directed to them directly via the NSCC website. It's not really something for us to speak on.
Fair enough. And there was a question also, I can't find it right now, but it basically asked, if the bylaws are private, how would one go about running for the board if the bylaws are private? I don't know if that question even makes sense, but I'll put it out there. And I'll try and go find it right now just to be certain I'm not misread here. Right here. How can you run for the board if the bylaws are private? Do you need the bylaws to run, or is it as simple as just talking to Al Durso and saying I'd like to run?
I think Joe touched on it. I mean, you have to be a dealer for 5 or 6 years, and then you can fill out a an intent.
Yeah, it comes in
right,
your
Joe,
packet.
immigrant
It's in your dealer packet. So you get a letter to run for the board every year if you're a dealer. It's sent to you. You simply put your name on it and you send that in. And then I believe, touching on the bylaw part of things, I believe once you become a board member, you then have access to the bylaws. So I think that's how it works. So again, any dealer that's been a dealer for 5 or 6 years, I forget which, but I believe it's 5, but it might be 6. You'll get a letter in the mail saying, would you like to nominate anyone to run for the board? And then inside that means yourself is also a nominee. So
right on. A couple of comments. Maurice in Baseball Collector says, I am so encouraged about the future of the show with these guys in charge. Collector's Dream says they have some good ideas. Glad to hear it, guys. Appreciate that. We're going to come back to this one that I'm looking at very, very soon. Bob's Big Boy here says, saw a record number of media badges in Chicago this year. Many were legitimate, like Sports Cards Live, although I didn't have one. But many were a stretch, to put it mildly. Not every wannabe influencer with a YouTube channel should get one. Now, I don't think this is really a comment for you guys, but it does remind me, and I want to say hi and kudos to Ray Schulte, who's done I have to say, a great job of making the National so much more present on social media. And I know that he is working with various ambassadors on the National, both under the your predecessor management and promotions team, and you guys are retaining Ray moving forward. Anything you'd like to say? Listen, I want to give Ray some flowers. He's a great man. Anything you guys would like to say about Ray, and maybe, and I'm going to have Ray on a separate episode eventually here in the next couple months, but anything you'd like to say about Ray and his overall impact that he's had over the last couple of years on getting the word out about the National? Joe?
Yeah, sure. I mean, Ray has, as you said and touched on, done a fantastic job. We have spent a lot of time with Ray over the last 18 months. We were out at Mint Collective with Ray. We were out at the Beckett Industry Summit with Ray. And we're very excited to have him on our team and working for us. And, Ray is the PR guy for the National. And, realistically, we're happy to be on Sports Card Live with you, Jeremy. And we have a lot of respect for your show and the positivity that you bring to the hobby. But, really, we're gonna take a step back, and we may pop on, when we feel it's relevant, but it's not really our forte to be out in the limelight and doing interviews and shows. But we felt it was important to put our face, on a screen with a wide audience to let people know who we are, so that they can run into us at shows, whether it be our own shows that we run or at the National, and know that we're accessible. But primarily, Ray will be the point person for us, and he'll be able to communicate, a lot of this information, and he is part of his job is to go on to different platforms and social media outlets to express the viewpoints of us and the management team and what the national has in store. So I have nothing but really great things and admiration for Ray and the job he's done. So
appreciate it. So Mookie Chilson here says, excellent call for increased board participation from Joe. I appreciate that. Very healthy and wise. Thank you for that, Mookie. Michael Ham says, do any of these gentlemen go to other shows not focused on sports cards and memorabilia to see what they do well that can transition to the national? Brian, why don't we start with you? Can you respond to this one, please?
I mean, listen, it's a great call. I mean, there's obviously, trade shows that just sponsor, do things that regard, marketing for trade shows. Obviously, Comic-Cons, is another good sector. Again, it's on our list of things to do. We're, sitting here August 12th, our priority bucket of things that we have to tackle. There's a million things we got to do, and they're all due yesterday. So, yes, I would absolutely love to go through, I'll use Comic-Con as an easy brand name, and to get in there and just look at their behind the scenes. What are they doing different? Whether it's talk panels, whether it's merchandise or widespread marketing and so on and so forth. There's definitely takeaways, and we need to be on there. We need to get feet on the ground and get in there, see what those things are. Implement them over here. Absolutely.
Anything to add, Jimmy or Joe, to that?
Just to comment on that is when we looked at the Cleveland facility, we went out there when there was an existing show going on at the Cleveland facility, and we're going out there again next month for another different kind of trade show that's going on there. So we can actually look and see how trade shows are handled inside the Cleveland facility for some additional ideas pertaining to that facility even. So that part we're doing for Cleveland.
Appreciate that. And how about you, Joe? Anything about any other type of events you've attended?
Yeah, I mean, our group has planned on attending, like Brian said, a Comic-Con. I've personally been to RV show, boat show, flower show, home show, and just by nature, my goal and agenda there wasn't work related. I was there with friends or family, but my brain is always working, so I'm sort of there, paying attention and looking behind the scenes and looking to how the organization of it is all happening. So I do have, I guess, some experience in going to some other trade shows. So
good to hear. All right. We have a couple, I think, are really important questions coming up here. The first one we're going to start with is from Stephen Pitts. What conversations has the board had? And this isn't the board, everybody. This is the management and promotions team. So maybe we'll apply this to the management and promotions team. What conversations have you guys had with Fanatics in regards to their movement towards live events? Additionally, have any of you experienced similar events in different sectors? Okay, we just talked about that. So we'll stick to the Fanatics part. And, this was on my notes, was really how does the existence of Fanatics Events impact the national and its status as being the most important annual event in our hobby moving forward? Joe, do you want to just continue and take us through your thoughts on this?
Yeah, sure. I mean, we value Fanatics very much so. I mean, they're a big piece of the national on a couple of different respects. We have had conversations with them. We're excited about future conversations with them. The launch of Fanatics live events, I think, is an exciting one for our hobby. I think that the National is a very unique show in that it is such a heavily collector-based show, and it's basically for the card, sports memorabilia, autograph collector. I think, Fanatics, may incorporate that into what they do with their live events. We're open to, being involved with them, and we want them involved with the National for many years to come. We've made that clear with them in multiple meetings that we've had. And ultimately, I'll touch back and reference Comic-Con. as a point of reference, as our industry has grown, the original Comic-Con in San Diego was very similar in not only age but size to the national. And as that industry exploded, there's now Chicago Comic-Con, Toronto Comic-Con, New York Comic-Con, and at least 4 or 5 other very large Comic-Cons that I'm failing to mention. And speaking to our own industry, we have several other large shows that have popped up across the country, which I'm sure many of the listeners have attended, like the Dallas Card Show, the Burbank Card Show, Jimmy and Brian's New York shows, my Chantilly and Virginia shows, the Boston show. I mean, there's a multitude of very successful large shows across the country. So, I would expect Fanatics to come in and do a great job. They have a massive reach. Their connectivity is second to none. But again, we're very positive with our relationship with them, and we're looking to work with them, not against them in any respect. So we're excited about the future with them, actually.
Great. Okay. Appreciate that. Andrew Bukowski says, respectfully, the hobbyists just need a place to gather. It doesn't have to be the National. So I hope the board realizes they aren't invincible. Fanatics is coming. I don't know. Any response to that at all, fellas, or not? Not is fine too. Joe?
I feel like we answered it. I feel like I answered. We're excited about it. We're not. This isn't a competition of who's going to come in and take over the best show in the world. I mean, again, referencing Comic-Con, what's the biggest comic convention in the United States? It's still the original Comic-Con, and there's other massive shows that are very, very wildly successful. So, to say that in a threatening way, I think is a little bit ill-informed and really just misguided.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those comments, Joe. Thank you for continuing with that. Rich Klein, great to see you, buddy. You'll catch the rest tomorrow. Thank you for jumping in here. Cardboard Casino says, Brian, Jim, and Joe, please reach out to the sports management program at Baldwin Wallace College, 5 miles from IX Center. Dozens of students could use the internship type experience that the National Sport Collectors Convention brings. So little tip for you fellas there, if that's something you want to consider.
Yeah, please have them email us for real. Please have them. We'd be happy to bring in students and give them some experience. Yeah, please have them send an email to the NSCC. That would be fantastic.
All right. I hope the author of that comment heard that, and we'll go ahead and do that. Peds card collection is Joe at Stand Up, transparent dude. I'm assuming that Peds knows you, Joe, but maybe not Brian and Jimmy. Otherwise, might have said the same thing about all three of you. And now for that second question I wanted to get to before, and Jimmy, this is where we're going to come back to you. 4x4 Rubicon says, have you guys ever considered adding a food truck area outside so people can have better options for quality food? Now, Jimmy, I think now might be a good time for us to take a look at the floor plan. And I believe, am I right in saying, gentlemen, that this is the first time and place that the Cleveland floor plan has ever been seen publicly? Jimmy?
Well, it was seen at the National when the dealers were picking their booths. So I'm sure it was circulated at the National over there. But first time publicly on an event like yours.
All right, very cool. I'm honored for that. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull it up. You guys sent me a picture of it. I'm gonna pull it up and share it. And Jimmy, if you can kind of navigate for me, and I will zoom in and out and move us around the floor plan as best I can. It should be showing up momentarily. There it is. So this is the National Sport Collectors Convention 2024, halls A to E in the IX Center. And with that, Jimmy, where would you like to start?
Let's start right in the beginning there with the arrow pointing to the left.
All right. So we are talking right over here.
Right. That's going to be a main entrance into the show. All customers, whether they're VIPs or general admission, are going to come in that way into the show. Okay. Now, if you want to, you'll see this where you have the pointer right now. That's the beginning of the booths. If you want to expand back out, you'll see the room is a rectangle, and booths is 600. I believe it's 608 booths. Again, we played with the numbers with adding a few, taking a few out. If you notice, the corporate areas are against the walls, one in the top part and one in the lower part. The reason that is we thought it was good to put the corporate booths against the walls so they're not blocking any dealer booths. It goes back to the conversation again that the show is about the dealers. That's what they want to. That's how the show is. It's about the dealers. So as Joe stressed on, corporate booths have been giant build outs nowadays. They build right to the ceiling. They've just gotten so much bigger. Years ago, the corporate booths had 8-foot walls. Now they have 30-foot walls. Okay. So with that being said, put the corporates in the middle. They don't block any of the dealer booths. We're also going to use what we call a step up mode, where you're going to have smaller corporates in the front and bigger corporates in the back. So when you're looking at it and viewing at it, corporates aren't blocking corporates. We'll take the same consideration in for them too. If you notice in the upper right-hand side of the show, we have PSA up there as an attraction to the show. We put them right up in the front of the show. People walk, they walk right to the right. PSA's up there. We try to look at traffic flow and get traffic flow to go through the entire show consistently. One of the problems in Chicago was, and again, not to say anything bad about the existing management team or anything else, in Chicago was, hey, there was 2 rooms. People said, I didn't know there was a second room over to the side. When the customers came in, some customers came in through the left side, some customers came in through the right side. So we're really trying to have traffic flow come in one way here and then have everything spread out through the show. Down the bottom, you see TriStar's Autograph Pavilion, Case Break in the corner. People have to walk through the entire show to get to everything, walk past all the dealer booths. In the middle of the show, you'll see right where your pointer is there. That is the food courts. Right there, the whole area is a food court. Beautiful area, carpeted, tables, chairs. People can sit down, relax, eat food like human beings instead of standing in the corner eating somewhere. Notice up in the top, you see where it says food trucks. You just touched on food trucks before. We are investigating where to put food trucks throughout the show. It's one of the things we want to put in there. So now you have a vendor that's set up in this right-hand corner of the show here. He wants to get a hot dog or a hamburger. Instead of having to run all the way across the show, he can now go right to the food truck and get his food right there. We really tried to look at the process of a show flow. It's what we put in consideration with generating this floor plan. And again, this will be the second largest national other than this year's national. This year's national, like I said, was about, we don't know the exact amount, 660, 670 booths, something like that. But Atlantic City was only 565, and this is 608.
Okay. Anything else, Jim, about the floor plan before we continue?
I think that covers it. Joe, Brian, anything else to put on the floor plan here?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would touch on is that, to the food ordering, dealers have expressed that, it's been very difficult. Some dealers man their booths by themselves. We don't have it nailed down exactly, but there will be a food ordering system for dealers to ease that process so that they don't have to leave their booths for 20 or 30 minutes to stand in line to get food. So that will be a big improvement, I think, for a lot of the dealers, as well as the food trucks, being accessible to corners of the room. So
can we speak a little bit, or I have a question. One thing I loved about the IX Center in its previous format was the super high ceilings, the natural light that came in. Jimmy, is there still going to be natural light coming into this building? And can you just speak to the ceiling heights? Because there's something to be said for super high ceilings. It just opens up the space. And the Stevens Center in Rosemont, it feels a little bit more confined just with the height of the ceilings. I'm not complaining about it. I do like the facility, the location the best. But can you just speak to natural light and ceiling heights?
So the top part of the facility from the food court up, that area there is got a ceiling height that is very high. It might be 40, 50 feet. It's very high like it always was in the old building. They have changed all the lights in there. They've redone the room over. There's beautiful lighting in the room. The lower part of the building, of the room is similar to Rosemont. 25-foot ceiling, which is what's in Rosemont, something like that. Very similar to that.
Okay.
But again, all new lighting in that side of the building too. And the other thing I want to touch on here too is that this is indeed for the vendors is a drive-in show. That was a question that somebody had asked. Just like Chicago, you could drive to your booths. There are 2 load-ins, one through the top part of the building, one through the bottom part of the building, which will make the load-in process a lot easier for the dealers, because you can have basically 2 load-in doors. Let's call it a red door and a green door. So if you're in the top part of the building, you go through the red door. You're in the bottom part of the building, you go through the green door. It will get rid of some of that congestion when dealers load in, which Joe said got back to the process of the doors being open and the heat always getting in the building. If we can get the load-in process simpler and more streamlined, that will eliminate any kind of, or could eliminate some air conditioning problems in the future.
Baseball Collector says, I will miss the Ferris wheel. I hear that. I hear that.
We heard it's been moved downtown somewhere. It's downtown in one of the parks downtown from what we heard.
Yeah, the Ferris wheel in the middle of the National was always a highlight and a reason for those super high ceilings, and also partly why we had natural light coming in. I feel like it was natural light. I think back to, I was at the National in Cleveland. I've been there 3 times in the past, and it just always felt like such a bright room. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's the floor plan, guys. Thanks for sharing it. I'll just point out the Case Break Pavilion down here, TriStar Autograph Pavilion down over here, corporate area number 2 down there, corporate area number 1 up here, special area for PSA over here, food trucks up here, other food and sit-down facilities right here. These are bathrooms right over here, as I looked earlier when I zoomed in, because that's something everybody's going to need to visit, and just tons of booths everywhere. We've had some questions come in, fellas, really on just, again, the space. So 4x4 Rubicon says, why are there no rest areas created so kids don't have to sit on the floor like animals? Any comments on kids at the National? Joe, Brian, Jimmy.
We did take notice to that, it's Saturday and Sunday at the show and, all the days. And we're very conscientious about the need of making more sit-down space wherever it may be, whether it's a cocktail table or whether it's 2 chairs daisy chained together, all the way up to 20 chairs, 50 chairs, 100 chairs, whatever it may be. We're going to have to look for all the free space and make that available. It's definitely something that's very high on our objective list.
Appreciate that. Thank you for that answer. Baseball Collector here says, those aisles look tight. I hope it's just a scaling issue. But before you respond, Cardboard Casino says, the IX Center is a huge space with configuration flexibility and huge aisles. Is there any chance in early 2024 that the National announces 50 to 100 additional booths? That empty ballroom could be an option, talking about this space right over here being the empty ballroom. Jimmy, I believe you're probably best to respond to that.
So the booth is going to be what it's going to be for the show here. We have not been told we can expand it. It's going to be set up to what it is, 608 booths. The empty ballroom there on the side is going to be used as a staging area when people come in to go into the show. Like anything else, when people show up an hour early, buy their admission tickets, they stand online. It's going to be used as a holding cell before they go into the show. So that ballroom is going to be a staging area. It's not going to have tables and chairs and fixtures in there.
And aisle width. I mean, I even noticed in Rosemont 2 weekends ago that it was crowded in some areas between the booths just to walk through, to the point where you couldn't. At times I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get through there. I'm going to turn around, go backwards, and go find a more open aisle. What are your guys' thoughts on aisle width in Cleveland versus what we saw last weekend in Chicago?
So basically, the aisles are all set up a standard way. They're not as tight as they look on the floor plan. Here again, you're trying to squeeze 608 boots into an 8x10 piece of paper here. So they're set up. I mean, cars are going to drive in and out, so the aisleways are big. What dealers tend to do is, Joe and I walked around and we noticed this. What dealers tend to do is they tend to bump out on the aisleways. So we are diligently going to enforce dealers to stay inside their booth setups, not bump out. We noticed in Chicago there was a lot of bumping out of booths, as there is at every show. Dealers love to take more space.
No doubt. I know that as a person who sets up myself. You always want that extra few inches just so people can get into your booth and on the various sides of your booth as well. Okay, Simon here asks, was there an official attendance count announced for Chicago? 2023 that just happened. I keep saying last weekend, but a couple weekends ago. Do we know what the official attendance was? Is that's something that has always been here? Just let me let's do that for a moment. Attendance has always been something that has been private, not very transparent. Do you guys, as the new management and promotions team, do you guys intend to be more transparent with total attendance across the weekend of the week of the national? And do we know what the actual attendance was this past event? Joe?
I mean, I think, well, no, we were not given any attendance numbers for 2023. I myself feel like transparency in that area would be better, but I think that that's ultimately going to be something that we have to clear with the board and make sure that is actually something that we're allowed to publish and give out. I think our team is fine, in doing that. But again, I don't want to say that's going to happen for 2024. I think it's a conversation that we'll have with the board and see what their take is on it. It's not anything that we've ever actually inquired as to why those numbers aren't released, but I think it's good to know. I think most people feel like this year's national was the largest ever. That's the talk that I've heard, but actual numbers have not been actually given out or verified. So.
Okay, well, appreciate the response for sure. Sports Card Lessons, Big Ken says, I set up as a dealer at the shows these guys run from White Plains to Chantilly. I'm confident moving forward, the National will continue to improve year after year with these three in charge. Thank you, Big Ken. Chip Brady says, great job, Brian, Jimmy, and Joe. I'm proud of you and the decision made to bring you guys on board as show managers. Very nice, Chip Brady, and welcome to the show. Okay, Michael Ham has these. I've been saving this one because I'm super curious myself, but let's just let Michael Ham ask the question. Will we have trade nights at the show, or are we just creating our own again, which we know happens in hotel lobbies around all the hotels? Cleveland in particular, there's no hotels in walking distance, at least from what I remember. So have you guys thought about trade nights being more of an organized at your level versus all of the privately organized trade nights? Have you guys thought about this? Can we see a trade night every night, an official trade night every night in Cleveland and thereafter? Joe?
Yeah, I think we can safely say it's going to be very much expanded upon, and we'll have details sooner than some information. But yeah, we'll have information coming in the near future about that. But there'll definitely be an expansion of official NSCC trade nights.
There you go. I think that's great news. And I'm curious, any plans? And I ask this because I've heard lots of people say that there's an opportunity for more things to do at the show besides visit the corporate booths and look at the cards in all the showcases. Breakout rooms with panels and workshops and that sort of thing. Have you guys thought about adding those aspects to the National? Maybe not in Cleveland, but is it on your roadmap at all? Brian, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And, nothing that we can comment on directly yet, but it absolutely is on a roadmap.
Awesome. Thank you. Colin Murray said priority number 2, 1, and 0 did not get into Cleveland. Realistically, when is a 0 expected to get a booth? What is the turnover of vendor booths every year? And I don't know that you guys know this because you probably have some idea, but I'll let you jump in, Brian, please.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the biggest issue here is that, going from the largest show, which is, obviously Chicago, we're 90 booths less this year in Cleveland. So, there goes a lot of the issue with the priority number. What the future is going to bring, and yeah, that's a whole different situation. But basically, from last year to this year, that's probably the biggest reason why 2, 1, and 0 aren't able to get booths, at least at this time.
Okay, appreciate it. Simon wants to know, has an idea. Massage therapists charging by the minute. You see this in casinos and in other events. The 40-plus crowd walking on cement will make those massage therapists rich. Have you guys had any discussion on bringing in that? It's a smirky sort of thing, but I think it's actually a legitimate potential request. Have you guys had any discussion around that? And I know it's funny, but I think it's actually reasonable. Jimmy, I see you laughing. Any thoughts?
No, we really haven't had any thoughts about that yet. It's interesting.
Send it to the inbox. Send it to the inbox. We'll put it in the pile. I'm gonna lose battery here in a minute. I'm sorry, but I'm staying on as long as I can. But I just wanted to give you a heads up in case I vanish. But
thanks for the heads up, Joe. But you, the other Jimmy, Brian, feel free to stay on. We're gonna wrap up in about 10 minutes, guys. So as long as you can last, Jimmy, Joe, I'm sorry, that would be great. Cardboard Casino wants to know, is the corporate space sold out for Cleveland next year? Joe?
Yeah, so corporate, there hasn't been any kind of a sellout at this point. Again, we had a team on the floor evaluating corporate booths, basically walking through the entire booths, rating them on a scale of 1 to 10 in multiple different categories. Each corporate booth is just going to be analyzed and looked at, from how much square footage they had to, what the appearance of their booth was. And then we're going to basically, starting in late September, early October, start to revisit all the existing corporate. And then that'll give us a better idea, probably later in the year, of if there is any new space available for new corporate vendors. But it is not currently sold out because it actually hasn't been assigned yet. But our goal is to try to be inclusive to as many corporates and encourage new companies and businesses as much as possible.
Thank you. Baseball collector, please define for us, what is the difference between a dealer booth versus a table? Is it just semantics? Jimmy, maybe this one's for you.
So they're all considered dealer booths. A dealer booth is a 10 by 15 foot booth, consists of 2 8-foot tables and a 6-foot table. It's only sold as booths.
I see. So there's a couple. It's like two tables per booth, sort of thing.
Two 8-footers and 1 6-footer per booth. A 10 by 15
per booth.
3
per booth, over 600 or so booths, 1,800 tables, basically.
Correct.
Thank you. Yankees fan says great information tonight. Thanks for your hard work, guys. Appreciate that. Yankees fan, thank you for the question. I'm going to ask you one of mine, guys. Does the uprising of the Dallas show and the Burbank show in Anaheim preclude the National from being hosted in those cities? Joe, maybe this one's for you.
Definitely not. Again, both Dallas, Anaheim, San Diego, were all on our list, of initial, when we said earlier, when Jimmy earlier in the beginning of the show said that there was 27 cities that we started with, they were all on the initial lists, and for different reasons, mostly dates. I believe both of those cities did not have the date available. Jimmy didn't really get into too much detail, but we're limited to about a 2 to 3 weekend period for the National to choose from. So between that and being a transient vendor, again, that knocks the list down. I think we went from 27 cities to single digit options, just based on those two criteria alone. So, but no, not at all. We're any major city that we feel fits all the criteria that Jimmy spoke to earlier is on our list, and will be on our list again when we search out 2028.
All right. No, very interesting. Thank you for that. Joe, you and I, we met at the National last year for the first time, had a great discussion. You approached me, and it was a really cool just moment to get to know you. So we've been talking about having you and the team on the show with me for over a year now. This is a year in the making, believe it or not. Why did you and Brian and Jimmy, why did you guys choose to wait until August 2023 to make a public appearance like this, Joe?
Respect for the existing team. We know those guys for many years, and a changeover like that, the existing team was there for nearly 20 years. and we just didn't feel like it was right. And number two, there wasn't really anything for us to really discuss. So it was really, we had a lot of work to do behind the scenes. So again, like I said to you earlier, it's not going to be our forte to be on all the different shows and platforms that are out there. We felt that like this was a really good opportunity for us to share a lot of information. And Ray will be the point person for us. He's our PR guy. But yeah, it was just out of respect for the existing team. We've known them for many years.
I think that's very, very nice. And I think that's a great reason. Vintage Card Collector here says, can you discuss better communication around events and talks at the show? And I think he means during the show. He goes on to say, I see a lot of room for improvement. And that's one thing that there were things going on in the room at various corporate booths and other booths as well, I'm sure, that I didn't necessarily know about unless I was following that booth or that company on Instagram or Twitter or wherever. I think Ray's done a wonderful job of getting the word out about the National with the ambassador program and just the various social media accounts. I think this is something different though. And it might tie into the whole, floor map, digital floor map thing, but a central depository where every corporate booth could tell that central depository that here are our events and when they are, so that anyone can go in and see what might be going on. Hey, what's going on right now? Let's check this list and see what booth should we be heading to. It might cause stampedes in some cases, but have there been any thoughts around that? And Joe, or if you're not the guy to ask, Brian, Jimmy, I'll let whoever step in.
Yeah, it's going to be Brian's area for sure. It's just a connectivity thing, and we're very well aware of it. And Brian is definitely got that on his list of connecting those dots.
We want to expand Ray's role, and we want to support Ray by getting more involved into his day-to-day and figuring out those tools, to obviously to get involved with these things. So, I mean, I think you're touching upon it, Jeremy, that it's definitely one or two steps out from where we're at. And that would take a little more of us getting our arms around it. But I see the value there. I mean, we would need contributions from, all the different, if there was 40 corporates there, to put in what they think is going to be their, whatever their program for, 5, 6, 7 days, and for us to compile it somehow, I mean, I get it, it'd be an undertaking, but I mean, it's doable, or at least to get some highlights out there. I mean, that would definitely be beneficial.
All right. No, I think that makes sense. And listen, I subscribe to continuous improvement. You don't have to be perfect right away. You guys are entering year one right now. So, you guys will learn as time goes by. You will get better year after year. I have full faith in that from you three. Getting to know Joe over the past year, we have talked more than once, and I've enjoyed it every single time. We've dined together a couple times. It's been great. Look forward to getting you, Jimmy, to getting to know Jimmy and Brian better over the next little bit as well. We're almost at the 2-hour mark here. Couple final comments, maybe one more question, guys, and then we're going to let you go. I know Joe's phone's about to die. Andrew says, thanks, Jeremy, for hosting the panel, and thank you to the guests. I hope after all the outcry against Atlantic City that the National isn't there in 2026. I can't see it being there, Andrew. Vintage Card Collector says, good job, guys. The tough questions just show how much we care. Love the hobby and want the National to be a success. Yep. Vintage, thanks for that comment. I think that's nice to hear for all of us on the screen right now at this point. So thank you very, very much. Cardboard Casino, we addressed that at the beginning of the show. Rich Klein says, I know it will take work, but a cheat sheet to people as they walk in the door will solve this issue. I think that's a great idea. Rich says, what took me so long to realize this simple answer? Good to have you in the room, Rich. All right, fellas, listen, we're going to end it right here, right at the 2-hour mark. So Joe, Brian, Jimmy, thank you guys for taking 2 hours out of your Saturday night on the East Coast. It's midnight where you are now. I'm going to let you guys go. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you guys choosing Sports Cards Live, my platform here, for your first public interview. since taking over. It means a lot to me, guys. I want you to know I don't take it for granted. I do greatly appreciate it. I hope you're happy with how this went tonight. Irish Flyer says, thanks, Jeremy, for the platform to hear from these gentlemen this evening. Good luck in the future and the success of the National. So final words to you guys. Brian, let's start with you. You can say goodbye to everybody and whatever else.
Yeah, I mean, listen, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Great things to come. Jeremy, thank you for hosting. This was a wonderful project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Jimmy?
Jeremy, again, just to reiterate what Brian said, thank you very much for having us on tonight. It was great. We look forward to the future.
Joe, thank you, Jimmy. Joe?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremy, and to everybody out there. Again, we just ask for a little bit of patience, and we very much appreciate all the comments, and we take them all to heart, and we look at them all seriously, and they're all under consideration. And there'll be a lot of them that can be done, and there'll be a lot of you out there that'll be able to say, that was my comment. That's what I said to do. And we're excited about that. So we're excited to bring that to fruition for a lot of people that have really great ideas. So thanks to everybody for voicing their opinions and, letting us know. But let's, just try to remember we're on a positive upswing of the National and our hobby. And let's all just try to remember it is a hobby and it's a place we go to escape and have a good time. And, on some level, let's not take it all that seriously. Let's just enjoy it and enjoy the moment and enjoy the ride and appreciate each other and the community. And, I know that's become very important in our hobby. So I guess that's about it.
These are sports cards, everybody. Let's enjoy it. I want to thank the chat thank you for the excellent questions and comments, everybody. Thanks for being patient. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your comment. We had a lot of them. Glenn Kubik says, good luck, guys. And Stuke says, thank you, gentlemen. And with that, everybody, this episode, you three hang tight one moment. But with that, everybody else, thank you for joining us. And this episode of Sports Cards Live is now